What? Get out of the car, I said. The lanky one gives Ove a slightly startled glance, but he doesn't quite seem to have the nerve to reply. Instead, he gets out of his car and stands beside it like a schoolboy in the dunce's corner. Ove points down the footpath between the terraced houses towards the bicycle shed and the parking area. Go and stand where you're not in the way. The lanky one nods, slightly puzzled. Holy Christ! A lower amputee with cataracts could have reversed this trailer more accurately than you, Obe mutters as he gets into the car. How can anyone be incapable of reversing with a trailer? He asks himself. How? How difficult is it to establish the basics of right and left and then do the opposite? How do these people make their way through life at all? Of course, it's an automatic as well of a nut. Might have none. These morons would rather not have to drive their cars at all, let alone reverse into a parking space by themselves. He puts it into drive and inches forward. Should one really have a driving license if one can't drive a real car rather than some Japanese robot vehicle, he wonders. Obe doubts whether someone who can park a car properly should even be allowed to vote. When he pulled forward and straightened up the trailer, as civilized people do, before reversing with the trailer, he puts it into reverse. Immediately, it starts making a shrieking noise. Obe looks round angrily. What the bloody hell are you? What are you making that noise? He hisses at the instrument panel and gives the steering wheel a whack. Stop it, I said. He roars at a particularly insistent flashing red light. At the same time, the lanky one appears at the side of the car and carefully taps the window. Ove rolls the window down and gives him an irritated look. It's just the reverse radar making that noise, the lanky one says with a nod. Don't you think I know that? Ove says. It's a bit unusual, this car. I was thinking I could show you the controls if you like. I'm not an idiot, you know, Ove snorts. The lanky one nods eagerly. No, of course not. Ove glares at the instrument panel. What's it doing now? The lanky one nods enthusiastically. It's measuring how much power is left in the battery, you know, before it switches from the electric motor to the petrol-driven motor, because it's a hybrid. Ove doesn't answer. He just slowly rolls up the window, leaving the lanky one outside with his mouth half open. Ove checks the left wing mirror, then the right wing mirror. He reverses while the Japanese car shrieks in terror, maneuvers the trailer perfectly between his own house and his incompetent new neighbor's, gets out, and tosses the cretin his keys. Reverse radar and parking sensors and cameras and crap like that. A man who needs all that to reverse with a trailer shouldn't be bloody doing it in the first place. The lanky one nods cheerfully at him. Thanks for help, he calls out, as if Ove hadn't just spent the last 10 minutes insulting him. You shouldn't even be allowed to rewind the cassette, grumbles Ove. The pregnant woman just stands there with her arms crossed. But she doesn't look quite as angry anymore. She thanks him with a wry smile, as if she's trying not to laugh. She has the biggest brown eyes Ove has ever seen. The Residents Association does not permit any driving in this area, and you have to bloody go along with it, Ove huffs, before stumping back to his house. He stops halfway up the paved path between the house and his shed. He wrinkles his nose in the way men of his age do, the wrinkle traveling across his entire upper body. Then he sinks down on his knees, puts his face right up close to the paving stones, which he neatly and without exception removes and relays every other year, whether necessary or not. He sniffs again, nods to himself, stands up. His new neighbors are still watching him. Piss. There's piss all over the place here, Ove says gruffly. He gesticulates at the paving stones. Okay, says the black-haired woman. No, nowhere is bloody okay round here. And with that, he goes into his house and closes the door. He sinks on to the stool in the hall and stays there for a long time. Bloody woman, why do she and her family have to come here if they can't even read the sign right in front of their eyes? You're not allowed to drive cars inside the block. Everyone knows that. Ove goes to hang up his coat on the hook among a sea of his wife's overcoats. Mutters idiots at the closed window just to be on the safe side. Then goes into his living room and stares up at his ceiling. He doesn't know how long he stands there. He loses himself in his own thoughts, floats away as if in a mist. He's never been the sort of man who does that, has never been a daydreamer, but lately it's as if something's twisted up in his head. He's having increasing difficulty concentrating on things. He doesn't like it at all. When the doorbell goes, it's like he's waking up from a warm slumber. He rubs his eyes hard, looks around as if worried that someone may have seen him. The doorbell rings again. Ove turns round and stares at the bell as if it should be ashamed of itself. He takes a few steps into the hall, noting that his body is as stiff as set plaster. He can't tell if the creaking is coming from the floorboards or himself. And what is it now? He asks the door before he's even opened it, as if it had the answer. What is it now? He repeats as he throws the door open so hard that a 3-year-old girl is flung backward by the draft and ends up very unexpectedly on her bottom. Beside her stands 7-year-old girl looking absolutely terrified. Their hair is pitch black, and they have the biggest brown eyes Ove has ever seen. Yes, says Ove. The older girl looks guarded. She hands him a plastic container. Ove reluctantly accepts it. It's warm. Rice, the 3-year-old girl announces happily, briskly getting to her feet. With saffron and chicken, nods the 7-year-old, far more wary of him. Ove evaluates them suspiciously. Are you selling it? The 7-year-old looks offended. We live here, you know. Ove is silent for a moment. Then he nods, as if he might possibly be able to accept this premise as an explanation. Okay, the younger one also nods with satisfaction and flaps her slightly too long sleeves. Mom said you are hungry. Obe looks in utter perplexity at the little flapping speech defect. What? Mom said you looked hungry. So we have to give you dinner, the 7-year-old girl clarifies with some irritation. Come on, Nazanin, she asks, taking her sister by the hand and walking away after directing a resentful stare at Ove. Ove keeps an eye on them as they skirt off. He sees the pregnant woman standing in her doorway, smiling at him before the girls run into her house. The 3-year-old turns round and waves cheerfully at him. Her mother also waves. Ove closes the door. He stands in the hall again, stares at the warm container of chicken with rice and saffron as one might look at a box of nitroglycerin. Then he goes into the kitchen and puts it in the fridge. Not that he's habitually inclined to go round eating any old food provided by unknown foreign kids on his doorstep. But in Ove's house, one does not throw away food, as a point of principle. He goes into the living room, shoves his hands in his pockets, looks up at the ceiling, stands there a good while and thinks about what sort of concrete wall plug would be most suitable for the job. He stands there squinting until his eyes start hurting. He looks down, slightly confused, at his dented wristwatch. Then he looks out of the window again and realizes that dusk has fallen. He shakes his head in resignation. You can't start drilling after dark. Everyone knows that. He'd have to turn on all the lights and no one could say when they'd be turned off again. And he's not giving the electricity company the pleasure, his meter notching up another couple of 1,000 crowns. They can forget about that. Ove packs up his useful stuff box and takes it to the big upstairs hall. Fetches the key to the attic from its place behind the radiator in the little hall. Goes back and reaches up and opens the trapdoor to the attic. Folds down the ladder, climbs up into the attic and puts the useful stuff box in the place behind the kitchen chairs that his wife made him put up here because they creaked too much. They didn't creak at all. Ove knows very well it was just an excuse because his wife wanted to get some new ones, as if that was all life was about. Buying kitchen chairs and eating in restaurants and carrying on. He goes down the stairs again, puts back the attic key in its place behind the radiator in the little hall. Taking it a bit easy, they said to him. A lot of 31-year-old show-offs working with computers and refusing to drink normal coffee. An entire society where no one knows how to reverse with a trailer. Then they come telling him he's not needed anymore. Is that reasonable? Ove goes down to the living room and turns on TV. He doesn't watch the programs, but it's not like he can just spend his evenings sitting there by himself like a moron, staring at the walls. He gets out the foreign food from the fridge and eats it with a fork, straight out of the plastic container. It's Tuesday night and he's cancelled his newspaper subscription, switched off the radiators, and turned out all the lights. And tomorrow he's putting up the hook.